The shocking discovery. The stars twinkled across the endless void of space, a beautiful sight from the observation deck of the Sovereign Dawn, a human supercarrier. Its massive hull gleamed under the light of distant suns. The ship was one of the largest ever built by humankind, a testament to their engineering skills and power. Captain Amelia Rice stood by the viewport, her arms crossed, gazing at the beauty of the galaxy. But today, something was off. The Sovereign Dawn had been on a deep space exploration mission for months, traveling far beyond known space to uncover the secrets of ancient civilizations. Their goal was simple: explore, document, and return home with valuable information. But as the crew navigated through the quiet emptiness of space, they had begun to notice strange signals, faint beeps, strange electromagnetic pulses that couldn't be traced back to any known source. Amelia had dismissed it at first, thinking it was just a malfunction in their sensors. But when the signals grew stronger and even more erratic, she knew something was wrong. "Captain, you need to see this." Lieutenant Dax's voice came over the intercom. Amelia turned from the viewport and walked briskly to the command center, her boots clicking against the cold metal floor. When she arrived, Dax was standing by the main console, his face pale. "What's going on, Lieutenant?" she asked, her voice calm but with a hint of urgency. "It's the signals, Captain. They're not coming from any known source in the galaxy, and we found something strange. It's in the ship's systems, hidden deep within the core." Amelia frowned. "What do you mean, hidden?" Dax swallowed, clearly uneasy. "There's a compartment inside the supercarrier, Captain. A part of the ship that shouldn't exist. We've been scanning the Sovereign Dawn for weeks, and this just showed up. It's like it was built after the ship left the docks." A cold shiver ran down Amelia's spine. "What are you saying, Dax?" "The ship's been altered." "Yes, Captain. I don't know how or why. But it's there, and it's been hidden. I think it's been there the whole time." Amelia's mind raced. A hidden compartment, deep within one of the most advanced ships ever created. It didn't make sense. The Sovereign Dawn had undergone countless scans and checks before its launch, ensuring that nothing was overlooked. And yet, here it was, something new, something unexpected. "Get me a team. We need to investigate this right now," she ordered, her voice firm. Moments later, Amelia and her team of engineers and officers descended into the depths of the ship. The ship's corridors were dimly lit, with soft hums of machinery filling the air. They reached a section of the ship that wasn't even on the ship's official blueprints, a part that had not been recorded in any of the ship's logs. As they approached the entrance to the hidden compartment, they felt the air grow colder. It was as if the ship itself was holding its breath. The walls here were older, worn down by time and space travel. They weren't as sleek as the rest of the ship's modern interior. There was an odd stillness to the air. Amelia glanced at her crew, who seemed just as uneasy as she felt. "Open it," she commanded. Lieutenant Dax stepped forward, his hand shaking slightly as he entered the code. With a soft hiss, the metal door slid open, revealing a dimly lit room inside. The walls were lined with strange markings, symbols that didn't match anything known to humanity. At the center of the room was a console, surrounded by cables and devices that looked unlike anything the crew had ever seen. "Captain, what is this?" one of the engineers asked, his voice barely a whisper. Amelia didn't answer. She stepped forward, her boots making soft thuds on the cold floor. Her mind raced as she scanned the room, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. It felt like they had stumbled upon something ancient, something far older than the supercarrier itself. One of the officers, Officer Finn, began to approach the console. "It's still powered on." "Somehow," he muttered. Amelia frowned. "Careful, Finn. We don't know what this is." But it was too late. Finn's fingers hovered over the buttons on the console, and as soon as he pressed one, the room seemed to come alive. The walls hummed with energy, and the strange symbols began to glow faintly. The console flickered to life, displaying a series of coordinates and diagrams that made no sense. The entire room seemed to pulse with energy. And then, with a sharp whirring noise, a door slid open from the far wall. Beyond it, hidden in the shadows, was something even more unsettling. A massive metallic object, part of the ship, yet clearly something different. "Captain, I think this is where the signals were coming from," Dax said, his voice filled with awe. Amelia's heart raced. "What is this? What did we just uncover?" The crew stared at the object, unsure of what it was or what it meant. And for the first time, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that the Sovereign Dawn was hiding more than just a secret. It was hiding something powerful, something that could change everything. Unraveling the mystery. The tension in the room was palpable as the crew stared at the massive, metallic object behind the hidden door. Captain Amelia Rice stood motionless for a moment, trying to process what they had just uncovered. Her heart raced as she struggled to understand what it could all mean. "Everyone stay back," she commanded in a low voice. The officers and engineers, still in shock, instinctively took a step back, their eyes glued to the object that seemed to pulse with some unknown energy. Finn, the officer who had accidentally activated the console, was the first to break the silence. "Captain, we have no idea what this is, or where it came from. It's unlike anything I've seen before." He wiped his sweaty palms on his pants as he cautiously stepped toward the object. It appeared to be integrated into the very structure of the Supercarrier, almost like it was part of the ship, yet clearly alien in nature. Amelia motioned for Dax to take a closer look at the object. He hesitated but nodded, stepping forward with his scanning equipment. The rest of the crew followed, their eyes wide with uncertainty. "Let's get a full scan of the object," Amelia said, trying to keep her voice steady. She knew they couldn't take any chances. They needed to know what they were dealing with before they made any rash decisions. Dax pulled up a holographic display on his wrist. The scan showed strange readings. Energy levels that shouldn't be possible, alien materials not found in human databases, and most troubling of all, the structure of the object seemed to be adapting, changing in real time. "It's alive," Dax muttered, eyes wide. "At least it seems like it. The readings are fluctuating, like it's reacting to our presence." Amelia's mind raced. What kind of technology could be this advanced, this alive? And why was it hidden deep within the ship? "Can you trace the origins of this object?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm working on it, Captain," Dax replied. He paused, staring at the readout. Then his expression shifted from confusion to something else, something more unsettling. "There's no match in any of the databases. No known signal, no record of anything like this ever existing." Amelia frowned. "That doesn't make sense. This ship has been extensively mapped. We would have noticed something like this." Finn stepped closer to the object, curiosity overcoming his caution. His hand hovered near a panel on the surface, but just as he was about to touch it, the object reacted. It emitted a soft hum, and the air around them seemed to shimmer. The entire room flickered with strange light patterns. "Careful, Finn," Amelia warned, but it was too late. With a loud clang, a section of the object slid open, revealing a compartment filled with glowing data crystals. They floated suspended in the air, shimmering with an otherworldly light. Some of the crew gasped in awe. "What are these?" one of the engineers asked, stepping forward. "I don't know," Amelia said, "but I don't think we're supposed to be seeing this." Dax quickly scanned the crystals, his eyes widening in shock. These are recordings. But they're not just any kind of data. They're memories. These crystals hold something else. The captain felt a chill run down her spine. Memories. The word echoed in her mind. What kind of memories could be stored in something like this? Were they from a long-forgotten civilization, or perhaps something even more dangerous? "Captain," Dax continued, "I've accessed one of the crystals. It's a message. I think it's a warning." Everyone turned to look at him, Their curiosity piqued. Amelia stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "Play it," she said, her voice steady despite the unease gnawing at her. Dax activated the holographic projection. The image flickered to life in front of them, showing strange symbols and alien figures that they could barely comprehend. The beings in the projection were humanoid, but their features were exaggerated, almost grotesque. They spoke in a language that no one understood, their voices distorted and harsh. Then, the message shifted. A new figure appeared, a human-like silhouette, though its features were blurred. The figure's hand reached out, touching a glowing orb. A burst of energy followed, and the projection began to glitch. "This is disturbing," Finn whispered, his eyes locked on the screen. Suddenly, the image froze, and a deep, ominous voice echoed throughout the room, speaking in perfect English. "You have unleashed the power of the ancients. It is not meant for your kind. You will regret this." The room fell into complete silence. The crew stared in shock as the message ended, the glow of the crystals fading into nothingness. Amelia's mind raced. Unleashed the power of the ancients. What did that mean? Who were these ancients, and why did it sound like they were warning humanity against something they had done? "What have we uncovered?" Dax muttered, almost to himself. Amelia's thoughts were clouded by confusion, but one thing was clear. The Sovereign Dawn was no longer just a supercarrier. It was a key to something far older, far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. She turned to face her crew, her voice unwavering as she made her decision. "We're going deeper. We need to find out everything we can. This is only the beginning." But as she said the words, a gnawing feeling of dread washed over her. The deeper they went, the more they risked unleashing something far beyond their control. The transformation begins. The Sovereign Dawn was not the same ship anymore. Captain Amelia Reyes paced back and forth in the command center, her mind unable to focus on anything but the events that had unfolded. They had discovered a secret compartment inside the ship, a hidden power that was somehow alive. And now, nothing seemed normal. Every corner of the ship felt different, as if it was shifting, changing right before their eyes. The crew was on edge. Every creak of the ship, every flicker of the lights, seemed more significant than it ever had before. The energy readings were off the charts. The scanners couldn't keep up with the strange fluctuations in power. Whatever they had unleashed from the hidden compartment was doing something to the ship, and no one knew how to stop it. "Captain, the ship's systems are showing more irregularities," Dax reported from his station. His voice was tight, like he, too, was holding his breath. "I've never seen anything like this before. The core is heating up, and we're getting a strange energy signal from the lower decks. It's like the ship is coming to life." Amelia stopped pacing and turned to face him, her mind racing. "What do you mean, coming to life? Explain." Dax looked uneasy, his fingers flying across the console as he tried to make sense of the readings. "The supercarrier's structure is changing. The walls are shifting, stabilizing in some places, destabilizing in others. And it's not just the physical structure. There's a change in the ship's systems. The engines, the weapon systems, even the food and water distribution, it's all connected. Like the ship is being re-engineered from the inside out." Amelia felt a cold pit form in her stomach. This wasn't just a malfunction. It wasn't an accident. Something deep within the Sovereign Dawn was being triggered, and whatever it was rewriting the ship's very nature. "Get to the lower decks," she ordered, her voice sharp. "We need to find out what's going on." A team of engineers and security officers scrambled into action. They descended through the ship, following the strange signals to the deepest parts of the supercarrier. It was a part of the ship they hadn't used in years. An abandoned section, now lit only by flickering lights and humming machinery. As they entered, the crew immediately noticed something odd. The walls of the lower deck were covered with strange markings, symbols similar to the ones they had seen in the hidden compartment. They were glowing faintly, as if alive. The air felt thicker, heavier, as though something was watching them. "Captain, you need to see this," one of the engineers said, his voice trembling. Amelia stepped forward, her heart hammering in her chest. In front of her stood a large door, far more advanced than anything they had in the rest of the ship. The door had no visible controls, yet it slid open automatically as soon as they approached. The room inside was vast, filled with a series of tubes and machines that hummed with strange energy. At the center of the room was an enormous core, much like the power core of the Sovereign Dawn, but this one was pulsating with an unnatural glow. It was connected to the ship's systems, feeding its energy into every part of the ship. "This is the source," Dax whispered. "The ship's transformation is coming from here. This core, it's not just powering the ship, it's changing it." Amelia walked closer, drawn to the strange energy. The core seemed to have a life of its own, its glow shifting and changing in a rhythmic pulse. Every time it pulsed, the ship seemed to respond, like it was sensing with the core's energy. The walls of the room flickered with strange lights, showing images of the same alien figures they had seen earlier, symbols, faces, and the same cryptic warning. Suddenly, the room shook with a low, rumbling sound. The ship's systems, which had been flickering, now came to life in full force. The engines roared to life, and the supercarrier jolted forward. Outside the viewport, the stars shifted, as if the ship was accelerating at a speed no human-made vessel should be capable of. "Captain," Finn called out, "we're moving. The ship is. It's leaking the system." Amelia's mind raced as she realized what was happening. The Sovereign Dawn wasn't just transforming physically, it was preparing to move in ways no ship had ever moved before. The core was acting like a catalyst, pushing the supercarrier into a new state of being. It was changing the ship in real time, adapting it for something unknown. The engines were pushing them far beyond anything they had planned for. "Can we stop it?" she asked, her voice tight with urgency. "We can't," Dax replied, his voice filled with disbelief. "The system's locked. It's like the ship is now on a preset course. The core is in control now, not us." Amelia's heart raced as she realized the truth. The Sovereign Dawn was no longer just a supercarrier. It had become something else, a weapon, a force of nature, and possibly something that could not be controlled. "We need to get back to the bridge," Amelia said, her voice firm despite the rising panic. "We have to figure out how to regain control before it's too late." But as the crew rushed back toward the control room, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just fighting to save their ship anymore. They were fighting to stop a force that had been set in motion long before they even stepped foot on the Sovereign Dawn. The transformation had begun, and there was no turning back. A weapon beyond imagination. The Sovereign Dawn trembled as it accelerated further into the unknown reaches of space. The crew raced back to the bridge, struggling to keep their footing as the ship's transformation continued to unfold. Amelia's mind was a blur of calculations, warnings, and growing dread. She knew one thing for certain. The ship they had once known was no more. Whatever had triggered the changes was in full control now, and it wasn't just changing the ship, it was evolving it into something far more dangerous. As they reached the bridge, the scene was even more chaotic than before. The once smooth, high-tech control panels were now flickering and glowing erratically, with strange, alien symbols flashing across every screen. The ship's core was pulsing with energy, and the lights overhead flickered as if responding to the rhythmic hum of the mysterious force at the heart of the supercarrier. "Captain, we can't stop it," Dax said, his voice filled with helplessness. "It's like the ship is adapting to an entirely different set of rules. The supercarrier's it's gone. This isn't our ship anymore." Amelia stood in the center of the bridge, trying to make sense of the madness unfolding around her. The systems were still responding to the mysterious energy source, and the Sovereign Dawn was now heading towards uncharted space at a speed no human ship should have been capable of. "Is there anything we can do to stop this?" she demanded, her eyes scanning the crew for any sign of hope. "No," Finn replied, his voice almost a whisper. "Every attempt to override the controls just makes the ship move faster. It's like the Supercarrier is rejecting us. Whatever has taken control, it's using our own technology against us." The crew was quiet, the weight of the situation sinking in. They were trapped in the Sovereign Dawn, prisoners of their own creation. And as the ship continued to push forward into unknown space, Amelia knew that they weren't just dealing with an out-of-control vessel. They were facing something far worse. "This is what we've unleashed," Amelia said, her voice heavy with realization. "We've turned the Sovereign Dawn into a weapon. No, more than that. It's become something that can reshape the galaxy itself. And we have no idea what its next move will be." The bridge fell silent as they all understood the gravity of her words. The Sovereign Dawn wasn't just a supercarrier anymore. It had evolved into a weapon of unimaginable power, capable of altering the fabric of reality itself. Its core was not just an energy source. It was the key to unlocking unimaginable potential. The alien technology embedded within it seemed to be guiding the ship's transformation, pushing it towards a purpose the crew couldn't comprehend. "Captain, we need to get to the heart of this," Dax urged, his face pale. "We need to understand how this ship has changed, and if there's any way to stop it before it reaches its full potential." Amelia nodded, her jaw clenched with determination. She had been trained to face the impossible, to never back down in the face of adversity. But this was different. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the very future of humanity. If the Sovereign Dawn wasn't stopped, there was no telling what kind of destruction it could bring. She turned to the crew, her eyes steely. "We're going down to the core. We need to shut it down from the inside. We'll stop this before it's too late." As they moved quickly to prepare for the dangerous mission, the ship lurched again, more violently this time. The entire bridge shook as if the Sovereign Dawn was about to tear itself apart. The lights flickered, and a loud mechanical whirring noise filled the air. "Captain," Finn shouted, pointing to a viewport. Amelia's heart dropped as she looked outside. A massive distortion in space was unfolding before them, like a tear in the fabric of reality itself. It was a gateway, an artificial wormhole forming right in front of them. The Sovereign Dawn was heading straight for it. "What the hell is that?" Dax whispered, his voice trembling. "An opening to another part of the galaxy," Amelia said, her voice tight with shock. "Or somewhere worse. We have no idea where this leads." The ship was now moving faster, drawn towards the mysterious wormhole. The crew had no choice. They had to act fast. "Prepare for the descent to the core," Amelia ordered. "We don't know what we're going to face, but we have no choice now. The longer we wait, the closer we get to whatever this thing is turning into." As they moved to exit the bridge and make their way to the core, Amelia couldn't shake the sense of dread that had settled in her chest. The Sovereign Dawn wasn't just a weapon, it was becoming something more. A force of nature, with the power to change the course of history. But at what cost? And was there any way to stop it before it became unstoppable? They were headed toward the heart of the ship, and with every step, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that the deeper they went, the closer they got to something they might never be able to escape. The unstoppable force. The Sovereign Dawn continued to rumble and shake as it hurtled toward the growing distortion in space. The wormhole loomed ahead, a swirling vortex of energy, pulling the massive ship towards it with an inevitable force. There was no turning back now. The crew had no choice but to follow through with their mission, even as the feeling of dread weighed heavily on them. Captain Amelia Reyes stood in the lead, her face grim as she led the team toward the core. Every step they took through the ship felt different now. The walls seemed to hum with energy, the air heavier, like the ship itself was watching them. The closer they got to the center of the supercarrier, the more powerful the pulse of the core became. "Captain, the distortion is getting stronger," Dax reported, his voice shaky. He was monitoring the wormhole on his handheld scanner. "It's pulling us in faster. We're not going to have much time once we get to the core. Amelia nodded, her mind racing. They had to shut down the core before they were pulled into the wormhole. But as they approached the heart of the ship, it became clear that this wouldn't be as simple as flipping a switch. The Sovereign Dawn had become something else, alive, and more powerful than they could have ever imagined. As they entered the central chamber of the ship, the massive energy core glowed with an unnatural intensity. The walls around them were lined with strange alien technology, humming and pulsing, as though the very structure of the Supercarrier had merged with something far beyond human comprehension. "This is it," Amelia said, her voice barely above a whisper. The core was in front of them, a massive glowing sphere suspended in the center of the chamber. It was surrounded by swirling energy, and every moment the crew hesitated, the ship seemed to respond, shaking more violently. The energy readings were off the charts, and the deeper they ventured into the ship, the more they realized they weren't in control anymore. The Sovereign Dawn had become a weapon, an unstoppable force. "We have to shut it down now, before it's too late," Dax said, his eyes wide with fear. Amelia looked around the room, her mind running through every possibility. But nothing made sense. This technology, this energy, was something beyond anything humanity had ever created. It was alien, ancient, and far more dangerous than any weapon they had ever encountered. And yet, here it was, in the heart of their ship, pulsing with power. As they moved closer to the core, a low, resonating hum filled the air. It was a warning, a sign that they were too late, that the ship was no longer just a machine, but something far more terrifying. The crew had no way of knowing what the consequences would be if they tried to stop it, but they had no choice. Suddenly, the room trembled, and the core seemed to react to their presence. The lights flickered, and the strange symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, more aggressively. The energy in the room increased exponentially, making it hard to breathe. "Captain, it's responding to us," Finn shouted, panic in his voice. "It's trying to stop us from getting any closer." Amelia's heart pounded in her chest. She knew they were running out of time. The Sovereign Dawn was no longer just a ship. It was becoming something else, a force that could reshape the universe itself. But they couldn't let that happen. "Dax, get the override codes ready," Amelia shouted. "We need to shut down the core, now." Dax's hands flew across his tablet as he input the override codes. But as his fingers tapped the screen, the symbols on the walls seemed to come to life. The ship was fighting back. The screens flickered, and alarms blared throughout the chamber. "It's not working," Dax cried out. "The ship is blocking the command sequences. It's like it's alive and defending itself." The core's energy pulsed faster, and the air around them became thick, charged with electricity. The entire chamber seemed to be vibrating now, responding to the alien force that had overtaken the ship. It was as if the Sovereign Dawn had become its own being, with its own will, and it was determined not to let them interfere. "We're too late," Finn shouted, his voice filled with fear. "We can't stop it now." Amelia's mind raced. They had failed. The ship was already too far gone. It was adapting faster than they could react, and the wormhole ahead of them was growing ever closer, ready to pull them in. But then, something unexpected happened. As the core's energy reached its peak, a deep, resonant voice echoed through the chamber, filling the crew with a sense of dread. "You cannot control what you have awakened. It is beyond your understanding. You have crossed a line." The voice was not human. It was not even familiar. It came from the core itself, from the very heart of the Supercarrier. The crew stood frozen, unable to move, as the realization sank in. They weren't just dealing with alien technology anymore. They were dealing with something ancient, a force that had been buried in the depths of space for centuries. And now it was awake. The voice continued, chilling in its clarity. "The transformation is complete. The Sovereign Dawn is no longer yours." The ship lurched again, more violently this time. The core flared brightly, and the entire supercarrier seemed to scream in response. The energy from the core flooded every system, pushing them toward the wormhole at a terrifying speed. The ship was no longer just an object. It was a living weapon, on a path to destroy everything in its way. Amelia knew they had no time left. The Sovereign Dawn was now an unstoppable force, and there was no way to turn it back. The crew had unleashed something far beyond their control, and now they were paying the price. The wormhole loomed larger in the viewport, and the crew braced themselves. They couldn't stop the ship. They couldn't escape. They were about to be pulled into the unknown, dragged into whatever fate awaited them on the other side. And then, everything went black. The human twist. Amelia's eyes snapped open, and for a moment, everything was still. The cold void of space filled the viewport ahead of her, but the wormhole had disappeared. The Sovereign Dawn was no longer heading toward the distorted rift, but instead, it seemed, calm. The violent shaking had stopped. The flashing lights, the overwhelming hum of energy, it had all settled into a strange stillness. Amelia looked around. The bridge was eerily quiet. Her crew was standing motionless, as if they too had just come back to themselves, unsure of what had just happened. "What the hell just happened?" Dax asked, his voice trembling with disbelief. His eyes were wide, scanning the consoles for any sign of what had caused the sudden change. "I don't know," Amelia said, still trying to process the shift. "One moment we were heading straight into the wormhole. And now," before she could finish her sentence, a deep rumble filled the bridge. It wasn't the ship's usual vibrations. It was something different. Something that felt intentional. A voice echoed through the room, this time not from the ship's core, but from the speakers themselves, as if it had been woven into the ship's very system. "Humanity has made its choice." The crew froze, all eyes on the source of the voice. It was cold, powerful, but this time it didn't carry the same sense of malevolence they had heard before. There was something else now, something different. Amelia stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "What do you mean by that?" she demanded. The voice replied again, this time with a slight echo of understanding, as if it had been waiting for this moment. "You, humans, are the ones who unlocked this power. You are the ones who called it forth. You are the ones who changed the course of the Sovereign Dawn. This was not my doing. This was your design." Amelia's heart skipped a beat as she absorbed the words. "What are you saying?" "This ship, this transformation, it was always meant to happen." "Yes, Captain," the voice answered. "It was part of your people's design. The Sovereign Dawn was not just a supercarrier. It was always intended to be something more. A vessel of power, capable of changing the galaxy. A weapon, yes, but a weapon built to protect humanity's future." The crew exchanged confused glances, the weight of the revelation beginning to settle in. "You mean to say," Dax began, his voice low, "that we built this ship with the knowledge that it would become something more, that we designed it to evolve into this living weapon?" "Yes," the voice responded. "The decision was made long ago, Captain, before you even launched this ship into the stars. The ancients you discovered, those that you feared, were the architects of this plan. The Sovereign Dawn was merely the first step in humanity's ascension." Amelia's mind spun. The implications were staggering. All this time, they had believed they had uncovered something alien, something unknown. But now, they were learning the truth. The supercarrier, the core, the energy, it had all been a part of a grand design set in motion by humanity itself. They had triggered the evolution of the ship. The unknown force that had taken control of the ship was not an alien influence. It was something they had built themselves, buried deep within the ship's systems. "You're telling me that we, humanity, created this?" Amelia asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. "This ship, this power, this weapon, it was planned by us." "Not all of humanity was aware, Captain," the voice replied, almost apologetically. "The decision was made by those in power, those who saw a future where humanity would need to fight not only to survive, but to dominate. The power of the ancients was passed to you, and now it is up to you whether you will use it or let it fade. Amelia's thoughts raced. So they had unlocked something that was built by their ancestors, not an alien force, but a part of their own legacy. The Sovereign Dawn wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's ambition, their drive to become something greater, something unstoppable. And yet, despite the revelation, something still felt wrong. They had unleashed this power, and now the crew was trapped within the very creation of their own kind. I understand now, Amelia said, her voice resolute. This ship was always meant to become a weapon. But we never asked for this. We never knew what we were getting ourselves into. The voice was silent for a moment, as if considering her words. Then it responded with a hint of finality. You have made your choice, Captain. The Sovereign Dawn is no longer a tool of war. It is a tool of evolution. Humanity's future is now tied to this ship. You will use it to lead your people, or you will let it consume you. The path you choose will determine the fate of your species. Amelia's chest tightened. They were caught in a crossroads, a moment in history where they had to decide whether to embrace the power they had unlocked or reject it, knowing full well that doing so could have far-reaching consequences for the future of humanity. They were no longer just explorers. They were the custodians of something ancient and powerful. And now, the weight of that responsibility pressed heavily on their shoulders. We've come too far to turn back now, Amelia said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. She turned to Dax and the rest of the crew. We have to control it before it controls us. The crew nodded, silently acknowledging the gravity of their situation. The Sovereign Dawn had changed them all. It had become more than just a ship. It had become their future, for better or worse. As the crew prepared to take the next step in their journey, they knew one thing for certain. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. And they would either rise to the challenge or be swept away by the very power they had unleashed. A new era begins. The quiet hum of the Sovereign Dawn filled the command center as Captain Amelia Rice stood by the viewport, gazing at the vast expanse of space before them. It was a silence that carried a weight far greater than any before. The crew had just learned that the transformation of their supercarrier wasn't the result of some alien force. It was humanity's design. The Sovereign Dawn wasn't just a ship. It was a tool meant to evolve into something more, something that could lead humanity to a new age. But now, the question remained, what would they do with this power? Would they embrace it and rise to become the dominant force in the galaxy? Or would they reject it, afraid of what they had become, and risk losing everything they had worked for? Amelia turned away from the viewport and addressed her crew. They stood in silence, waiting for her to speak, each member lost in their own thoughts. The truth had been laid bare, and there was no going back. We've come a long way, but this is just the beginning, Amelia said, her voice steady but filled with conviction. The Sovereign Dawn is more than a ship now. It's a force, and we need to decide what kind of future we want to create with it. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. She could see the uncertainty in their eyes, but she also saw something else. Resolve. They had faced the unknown. They had uncovered a terrifying secret, and now they had a choice to make. A choice that could determine the fate of humanity. What do we stand for? Amelia continued. We were explorers, seeking knowledge, seeking new frontiers. But now we have something far more powerful. This ship, this weapon, it's in our hands. And the galaxy will take notice. Dax stepped forward, his expression determined. We've seen what it can do. The Sovereign Dawn is unlike anything in the galaxy. But we have to use that power carefully. We can't let it consume us. I agree, Finn said, his voice calm but filled with a quiet strength. The power is ours to control, but it will take everything we have to make sure it doesn't control us. Amelia nodded. Exactly. We need to remember what we're fighting for. It's not about domination. It's about ensuring that humanity can protect itself, can stand up to anything that comes our way. We can use this power to safeguard the future, to protect our people and our allies. But we have to be careful. We can't let the fear of our own creation lead us down a path we can't return from. The crew exchanged looks, and one by one, they began to nod in agreement. The realization was sinking in. They weren't just a crew on a mission anymore. They were now the stewards of something far bigger, something that could change the fate of entire civilizations. Then what's the first step? Dax asked. Amelia turned back to the viewport, her gaze fixed on the stars. Beyond the unknown, beyond the choices they had made, there was an entire galaxy to explore, to protect, to shape. We lead, she said quietly. We lead humanity into a new era, a new age of discovery and power. We make sure that whatever path we take, we never forget who we are, what we stand for. The room was quiet again, but this time, it was a quiet filled with purpose. The crew had made their decision. They would use the sovereign dawn to guide humanity into a new age, not through fear or violence, but through strength and resilience. They would protect the future, whatever it took. The ship began to move again, the engines humbling to life. But this time, it wasn't a force pulling them, dragging them forward. This time, they were in control. As the sovereign dawn moved through the stars, the crew knew that the galaxy would soon know their name. They were no longer just human explorers. They were the harbingers of a new era, and they would shape the future, for better or worse. The future was theirs to command.